what's up? Welcome back to my series where I do a book to show comparison for Amazon Prime's The Wheel of Time Season 2. And today we'll be talking about Episode 7. Two things before we get started. Yes, I know I gloated too soon about the stilling last episode. I stand by it. I don't regret it. We all make mistakes sometimes. And number two, once again, I see people getting a little confused about why I do this series. They think I am using the differences between the book and the show to hammer the show with how bad it is. This is actually just supposed to be a resource where I am just, without my opinion, telling what the differences are, whether those are good or bad. I actually like some of the changes they've made. I dislike some of the changes. I say my opinions at the end. So if you just want to be here for the changes and you don't want to hear my opinion, you can click off. That is totally fine. But just stating the differences isn't trying to be negative. It is just a resource for either those who don't plan on reading the book or those who have read the book a while ago and are just curious to be reminded about the differences. With that being said, let's get into episode 7. Okay. Yes, this is right. The prophecy, it's the end of the AL war. Yeah, I like this. Okay, we have to talk about this because are they in Carrion or are they in Tar Valon? Did they change where the White Tower is to Carrion? Because first I thought that the traveling was just a little weird, like, wow, they get places fast, which I've kind of talked to last episode. But then they say like multiple times they're in Carrion. But then the room that Rand and Swan meet in looks exactly like the Tar Valon White Tower room from season 1. So like, am I getting wires crossed, or can someone explain that to me? Because like, I don't really get what I'm missing here about where they are. So okay, this scene actually takes place at the very beginning of the Great Hunt because Rand doesn't run away after the Eye of the World. He's summoned by Swan, the Emerald, and Lan has actually already taught him a lot. Like, he's taken kind of Rand under his wing and taught him a bunch of stuff, and they nod to it a lot here. He does say like, face it on your feet to Rand, and that's what Rand keeps thinking in his head, and he tells him about the cat crossing the courtyard. But what's super cool is that because Lan has taught him so much, when he gets in, Swan asks him to sit because it'll be a while, and then Rand is like, you know what? Wait, hold on a second, I'm gonna read it.
5 minutes later.
Okay, I found it. He says, "Thank you, mother." He bowed his head then, as Lan had told him, glanced at the chair and touched his sword. "By your leave, mother, I will stand. The watch is not done." The Amyrlin seat made an exasperated sound and looked at Moraine. "Have you let Lan at him, daughter? This will be difficult enough without him picking up warder ways." I just always loved that part. So I like that they nodded to it. It's okay. I said I wasn't gonna do any opinions, but that scene is one of the reasons I'm the saddest that Rand got split up from Lan so early, is because we didn't get to see the development of that relationship, but I love that they put a nod to it here. Oh, one more thing. He's also not alone when he's with the Amyrlin seat. Moraine and Varen are also in the room there. And this is when like they tell him, you are the Dragon Reborn, and Rand still hasn't accepted that within himself, so it's kind of like a crisis for him. So my question is, do we think Mat is in the dream world here? That's my current theory, is that Mat is in the dream world just because he gets to Falm so quickly. And if they were in Carrion, like, that's just too far to travel. So my guess is he's in the dream world. You can weigh in on that below. Liandrin obviously isn't involved in Moraine's family because the storyline just isn't found in the books. So he actually doesn't channel in front of the Amyrlin because, again, he's denying it. He's denying that. And she actually lets him walk free in the book because they are trying to manipulate Rand. They're trying to get him to do what they want without him knowing. If I remember correctly, like, I know for sure she lets him go like, okay, you can walk free, but they're hoping they're kind of like going to manipulate him in the right ways, but make him think he's doing it himself. I feel like in the books, we don't get to actually see the training this directly. We're usually just told about it after the fact from Egwene's perspective, like as she's talking to Min. Okay, one more opinion though, is that Zoe is just doing the most in this episode. Her little expressions feel so much like Nynaeve, and I just really loved that scene. Okay, so I really like that they include this as a maiden hand talk, and the two Aiel she is with, Bane and Chiad, are the ones she's with in the books when she first gets introduced, when she meets Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine. I think I talked about that a couple episodes ago. And what's interesting is Dalen here, who is dead, is actually just injured when the girls meet up with them, and Nynaeve actually is able to heal Dalen, and then later in a different situation, Dalen gets killed. So different circumstances, but yes, Dalen ends up dead in both cases. And it's kind of interesting because Nynaeve like mourns the waste of the heel. So it's kind of funny. So obviously, yeah, this exact scene doesn't happen in the book because Dalen dies in a different way. But Ji'ito is the really like intense system of honor that the AL follow. And you could definitely have a physical punishment to make up the toe that you have or your obligation. There's a lot of complexity to this whole thing, but yeah, so that's there. That's a thing. So again, remember, we really don't see Moiraine's family like this, or it's not kind of the same as her family is in the book, so definitely her nephew being a dark friend like isn't a plot like this in the book. So Rand wouldn't ask Lanfear for help, especially this early on, because he didn't even know that she was a Forsaken. They do end up collaring a Soldam in the book as they help Egwene escape. It's just in a little bit different circumstances, and as I am currently saying this out loud, I am going to stop speaking because I realize there's a good chance they could cover this in the next episode. So we'll just put a pin in that conversation. We'll circle back to collaring the Soldam. Remind me. So this last part I actually need your guys' opinion on. Do you think Siuan is using compulsion on Moiraine? For those who haven't read the book, compulsion is a weave that is like a command. It uses the one power to compel someone, to force someone to do something. There's a lot of complications within that, like how much you do and how little you do it. And it says like, some Aes Sedai do it accidentally in a light way before they're trained. It's heavily banned by the Aes Sedai. Like they do not like it, but obviously the Forsaken use it. I personally don't think it's not really necessarily against the oaths to do it. I think you could do it. I think it's more just frowned upon. I do also know that the Blue Aja, which is what Siuan and Moiraine are from, have like a weave-like compulsion that they sometimes use. So I'm curious, do you think it's that? Or do you think that Siuan was just kind of calling into power the oath that Moiraine did on the Oath Rod? I'd be curious. I think it gives it very different tones. I didn't see like the whip-like compulsion that's described in the book, so I think there's definitely a chance that it was just the Oath Rod. I do think if Siuan used compulsion on Moiraine, it does give it like a very different vibe, so I'm curious about your guys' opinions on that below. I won't make a definitive statement. It seemed like compulsion to me, but I was wrong about the stilling, and I don't need to hear you guys talk about it again. Okay, so I actually liked this episode quite a bit. I thought there was a lot to like. It was probably the episode I've liked most since watching Wheel of Time. I have so much to say about the Moiraine and Siuan plotline because I liked so much of what they did in this episode, and in fact so much so that it makes me again frustrated at the show for taking so long to get here, because I think now seeing this episode, there were so many missed opportunities earlier on where we wasted so much time, whereas this episode felt like not only did we move plots forward, but like I also feel like we had character development that made a lot of sense. And those are things that have been missing for me. So I just wish it hadn't taken so many episodes to hit its stride. Now, this is probably something I should save for my final wrap up, but we're gonna say it here. I just a little peek behind the curtain. I do these pretty late because I watch the episode and then I film. And I just feel half delusional when I'm making these because I don't usually like film so late and just say my thoughts right as they come. But here we are. So here's the thing about the Moiraine and Siuan thing. I loved the beginning of this episode, and I am so mad it wasn't in season 1. I think that Moiraine and Siuan prophecy thing should have been like perhaps in episode 8 of season 1. I think that would have been a great way to hit home the prophecy. It also would have been great because we kind of see the beginning of, not the beginning, we are introduced to Moiraine and Siuan's relationship, which seems really positive in season 1. So then to have that put a little bit of like a question mark, because it is a question mark. Oh, Siuan didn't always want this. They were going to end things. Moiraine did. Then they had this prophecy and it set them on a new path. That intrigue kind of sets them up. And then what I wish would have happened is let's get rid of the useless Water Land storyline, and we should have been seeing the Siuan and Moiraine storyline this whole season, because it seems that they wanted drama, and I think the Siuan and Moiraine drama is so much more impactful and interesting. So instead of this like manufactured Lan Moiraine thing, and most people I know feel like the Water storyline is just so off the rails. First of all, I actually did ask myself, where was Siuan? Why wasn't Siuan with Nynaeve's accepted test? Like, where has she? She's felt missing this season. To come so late into the game and then have like an emotionally impactful episode that I feel like would have been 10 times better if we had kind of seen the up and down of Moiraine and Siuan's relationship, with Moiraine being what she thought stilled, and that would have just been so much more interesting. Like, I feel like it was so rushed this episode, which was such a bummer because I really felt the emotion between those actresses and just felt like it would have been so much stronger if it had been built up. So I think it was just like a missed opportunity because I did like it so much in this episode. Similarly, again, I really haven't liked how rude they made Moiraine in the beginning. if Moraine, I loved this conversation between Lan and Moraine about like, Moraine, you can't do it all alone. Like, it would have been so nice if it was, they had built this up. Like, Moraine and Lan are fighting, but maybe they're still together. And then it's like, you have to let people in. It just felt like that moment felt so true to their characters, but so much of the other stuff hadn't been. I feel frustrated by that because this was so good. And again, same with Moraine and her sister. I love when her sister turns, like protects Moraine because she believes in what Moraine is doing. What a great moment. I wish I would have been able to see glimpses. Like if the sister had talked more about how great her and Moraine's relationship was, but then you heard the prophecy, or 20 years ago, I don't know what happened, but you changed and it hasn't been the same since. Wouldn't that have been nice if they had been planting those seeds so that when there's a reveal, like it's bittersweet. Like, oh, Moraine and her sister have been having such struggles, but she relied on the good times. But it just felt all bad. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like they could have dropped a little seeds to make the character development in this episode even better because it would have been developed longer. So I know it's kind of opposite of canonical, but I personally kind of liked it when Moraine and Rand plotted for him to go to sleep and ask Lanfear for help. Kind of loved that scene. Totally worked for me. I know book people probably aren't gonna like it because it's like so different, but like the thing is, Lanfear in the show and Rand, like they're already different than the books, and I just want the show to do the interesting thing, and that was the interesting thing in my opinion. So I actually quite liked that scene. I would be very interested on both non-book readers and book readers' opinion on that scene. I personally liked it. So finally, a couple things that didn't work for me, because like I said, a majority of this episode I really liked. The one big thing I'll say, which is luckily a small part of the episode, the Mat scenes just aren't working for me. I actually laughed during the Mat scene. I thought it was so cheesy when it was like him holding himself. I laughed out loud. I'm sorry. I just thought it was kind of dumb. Poor Mat. I just don't get what they're doing with his storyline. And yeah. This is my opinion time. If it's not the dream world and Mat is actually in Falme, like, look, I got my book right here. Let's pull out a map here. It's just the traveling in the show. I guess maybe they knocked him out and went through a Waygate. Okay, maybe I'm convincing myself out of it. Here we go. It's just so far, you know? That's my fingers are where they traveled. It's just far. They knocked him out, used a Waygate. It just felt pretty lazy. It felt lazy. It felt like, once again, they just like don't really know what to do with Mat. So that didn't work for me. I did have another laugh. I don't even know if I should talk about it. There's just so much baggage. The narrative is so obsessed with Egwene in a way that I just don't think is serving the show. I'm going to talk about this at length probably in my final wrap up, but I also laughed out loud when Swan was like, this would just been so much easier if you were a girl, to Rand. And then it's like, hard cut, Egwene. It's like, okay. I've been trying to ignore the people that said that they just wanted Egwene to be the dragon, but I was like, did they just want Egwene to be the dragon? That did make me giggle. One thing I just realized I liked that Rand, I have a lot of issues with like the whole, I still don't think it was a good choice to shield Moraine. Just in general for the narrative. This fixed it a little bit for me. It made me see the vision. Like, I wish they had done it better. Anyway, the whole point being, I really like that Rand got to be the one to cut it. Like, he got to actually use his power. Once again, I would have loved if Moraine and Rand had more scenes together at the beginning of the season so that feels a little bit more impactful. But I am so glad they finally let Rand use some magic. Once again, don't really feel like they're utilizing Rand in the way that I would love, but I did like that he got more screen time this time, so that felt good. Okay, this was a long episode. I'd love to know what you guys think about this episode. I felt way more positively about it, to the point where, around episode 4 where I was so bored, I was like, I just don't even think I'm going to watch season 3, where now I'm like, man, if they nail this last episode, I can see it being like extremely on track and extremely good in season 3. I felt a little turned around because the last few episodes have built upon themselves so well for me. I'm kind of like seeing the vision. I do have a little bit of stress because I remember liking episode 7 last season and then hating episode 8. So I'm just really hoping that doesn't happen again and we kind of build on this momentum. Everyone's in the right spot. I'm very interested to see what happens. Please let me know your thoughts on this episode below. Tell me anything I missed, and Make sure to subscribe and like if you want to follow me along for more Wheel of Time content. And to see what I'm currently reading as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.